Hello and welcome to the Hoop Pets podcast. It's Mike Lensing here with my co-host Jason Sunkel tonight, and we are going to look at that. Jason went to Olmsted Falls girls regional semifinal game. Got to
It was a
see a
close one. It's a close one.
close one. Yeah, you would think that to get to the final eight in the state of Ohio, that you'd have to win a game that would be remotely competitive, but
It was
it
competitive in the
was
first quarter, Mike. It was competitive in the first quarter. It was a 3 point. It was a 3 point lead in the first quarter, and then it was 17 points at half, and they never looked back.
all right. Well, let's hope someday that we're probably never going back, but boo to the OHSAA is all I can say. Every change that they've made to the state basketball tournament here in Ohio, I vehemently vote no on all the changes. Bring back the old district. Everybody's playing at the same place where you can go and watch multiple games in a night, where you're starting out and maybe you get one easy game. And then after that, you're competitive and you got to win 7 or 8 games to win a state championship. That to me is real high school basketball. This win one game and you're in the regional tournament, and even then you may not get a competitive game. Not a fan. But anyway, to that
Hey,
end,
we'll
congratulations
take
to
we'll
Olmsted
take it.
Falls.
We'll take it, Mike. We'll take it. We're
All right.
not. We're us in Olmsted Falls. We'll take the victories. We like the victories. We're going to
Understand.
continue. Listen, I think this is 6 straight regional finals. Although 4 of those were in D1, so we're not going to. That was before they made the change. 3 straight Final
Listen,
Four, possibly 4 straight Final Fours, Mike. I mean, come on now.
there's nothing wrong with it. It's great.
Little town in Olmsted Falls, They won the state championship as the smallest D1 school when they won it. Come on now, we'll take it. We love it.
Listen, I'm not criticizing Olmsted Falls. You got to play within the system that you're playing in. I'm criticizing the OHSAA. I just feel like they've done damage to high school basketball, no question, in the pursuit of chasing more money and more gate fees to charge people to come to one game instead of getting to see multiple games, and then having 7 state tournament championship games instead of just 4. And whatever. Anyway, we're not here to talk high school basketball. We are here tonight to talk some NBA.
Yeah,
And what we
there's some
thought we would
drama
do
like
is
high school in the NBA, Mike.
there
There's some
is.
drama and some nonsense in the NBA, like it's high school. What do you
There
think about
definitely
that?
is that. There definitely is that. Do we want to start with the couple news items, or what Jason and I had planned to talk about tonight is to pick out some playoff series? We're about 6 weeks away from the start of the NBA playoffs, but we thought we would try to maybe identify some series in each conference that we hope come April and May that we get to see these teams square
I
off. So I
I
don't know.
think
Do we
we
want to
start. I
hit
think we do
these?
the playoff. I think we do the playoff things, and then if we touched on the news items, then we've touched on the news items, and if we haven't
Okay.
touched on them, then we can circle back at the end. Does that make sense, Mike?
Makes sense to me.
All right. So I'm gonna let you go first because I always feel like I go first on these. I'm gonna let you
Okay.
share yours. I'm gonna let you share your Eastern. We're gonna start with the Eastern Conference. We each are coming with two. And if they end up being one of them means that we did not talk beforehand, we decided we weren't going to share. So if we end up saying one that the other person said, like it has written down, we'll both chime in on it, and we will both chime in on it anyways. But maybe you know we can add a little bit more to it. But okay, go ahead, Mike. I'll let you go first.
All right. So I think I'm going to start out my Eastern Conference playoff picks by just looking at the teams that I have no desire to see in any playoff series that are currently in the play-in or the top 6 in the Eastern Conference. So I have no desire to see the Toronto Raptors in any playoff series. I do not want to see the Orlando Magic in any playoff series. I do not want to see the Miami Heat in
Wait,
any
you
playoff
don't want you don't
series.
want to see Jamal Mosley and Paulo Banchero throw each under the bus?
I do not. I am not interested in seeing anything to do with the Orlando Magic. I am not interested in the Atlanta Hawks. So that leaves me with, I guess, I don't even know how interested I am in the Philadelphia 76ers. They're not going to be one of my picks, but I could maybe tolerate a Sixers series somewhere along the way. But I am not interested in watching the Sixers for the premise of this particular activity. So that leaves me with 5 teams: the Pistons, the Celtics, the Knicks, the Cavs, and the Charlotte Hornets. Now, clearly, you and I are going to be most interested in whatever playoff series the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to participate in. So I'm going to, at least for my first pick, I'm going to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers aside. And then the next step in my decision making process here was which of these teams that are currently above the Cavaliers in the standings, meaning the Pistons, Celtics, and Knicks, which one of those teams would I most like to see draw the red hot winners of 5 in a row Charlotte Hornets? And so I am going to go with my first series that I would love to see is the Detroit Pistons against the Charlotte
That's
Hornets.
who I have.
Now,
Mike, that was my number one series I want, because I truly believe the Charlotte Hornets could beat the Detroit Pistons, because they could do they're the exact opposite team as the Detroit Pistons. They can shoot the three. The Detroit Pistons cannot beat the Cavs. The first night they played on Friday, the Cavs didn't have it didn't have Harden. They didn't have did Mobley play? Mobley played the game. They didn't have
Mobley played
Harden.
yet.
They didn't have Mitchell. They didn't have your favorite player, Dean Wade. They didn't have any of these guys. The best player on the team, Dean Wade. They didn't have any of those guys. And the Cavs should have won that game without the stupidity of the foul up three. We don't need to litigate that. That was just dumb. Okay. And then tonight, again, no Mitchell. Allen gets hurt. Hopefully it's not bad. And Jalen Tyson Cade Cunningham was basically disappeared. And they couldn't they couldn't shoot their way out of a paper bag. My dad, who's, his basketball takes aren't very good, Mike. They don't know, but he says you've got the Cavaliers who make 17 threes and the Detroit Pistons make 9 threes. The Cavs shoot 46 threes. Detroit shoots 19 or whatever they are 24, and they shoot the same percentage, but the Cavs made 8 more threes than the Pistons. If my dad, who is basketball illiterate 99% of the time, can see why the Detroit Pistons are not a team that I would pick to win the Eastern Conference, I'm all in. I want the Charlotte Hornets to knock that. That is an 8-1 series that I believe would actually possibly happen, that the number 8 team beats the number 1 team. I'm just going to say that right now.
I think that's entirely possible. And I'll just briefly touch on this game tonight between the Cavs and the Pistons before I dive more into the Hornets, Pistons, and why I chose that particular matchup. But the Cavs definitely faded down the stretch, although they hit a couple big shots. You saw the warts that this team has moving forward, in that they can't rebound and they're going to get out physical. Now, Detroit, I don't think, as you have so eloquently stated, and your father has also brought to our attention, the Detroit Pistons cannot shoot. However, I don't think I've ever seen a game where in the last 2 minutes, where a team is trying to run out the clock, that the other team just takes the ball away from the team that's trying to hold the ball. I mean, Asar Thompson just took the ball from James Harden, took the ball from Dennis Schroeder twice on possessions where the Cavs are just trying to run out the clock and get fouled. And instead, Asar was like, just give me the ball and let me go to the other end. And that made the final score of this game much closer than it should have been in the last 2 minutes, where the Cavs should have gotten themselves to the free throw line instead of just letting themselves get pickpocketed. So that, again, concerns me when it comes to the Cavs. The game the other night, when you foul up 3, and I know there was some questionable officiating in that game, but still not a game that I like to see the Cavs throw away. But that's neither here nor there. It was a good win for the Cavs without Donovan Mitchell. After watching these 2 games with the Pistons, I'm not that worried about Detroit, other than the physical nature of their ability to offensive
Mike,
rebound
JB
and beat
Bickerstaff's the
up.
coach. I'm out.
Correct. And I agree with you there. I think that at some point, JB's lack of ability to adjust on the fly, I think, is going to be something that's going to hurt this team. And then to your point and your dad's, they just don't have enough shooting. I'll be very, very surprised if Detroit gets past whoever they end up playing in the second round. They may win a first round series depending on what that matchup is. But if they were to draw the Charlotte Hornets, which is a series that I would love to see, I think you said it earlier, in that there is a huge contrast between the Charlotte Hornets and the Detroit Pistons. That is, I think, a huge difference in terms of just the ability to shoot the ball, the offensive firepower that Charlotte has. Now, Detroit is obviously a much, much better defensive team. And maybe that physical nature and the type of defense that Detroit can play, maybe that would be enough to carry them. But I do think that Charlotte's shooting is unbelievable and has been good since all these guys have gotten healthy. I know you've heard and listened to things and seen the statistics that basically Charlotte's starting five when they've played together with Lonzo, Knipple, Brandon Miller, Musa Diabate, and Miles Bridges, that they're something like 180 plus 189 and 200 and some minutes that they've played together. Basically, they're the best five-man lineup in the league. Since that starting lineup has been in place, they're now, after winning tonight, they're 19-2 with that starting lineup. One of those losses being to the Detroit Pistons in the game where there was the brawl and Miles Bridges and Diabate did not finish that game. So Charlotte has been on a huge tear. And I think when you look at the Hornets and you think back to our preseason discussion, right? It was all centered around LaMelo Ball. And can LaMelo Ball be a guy that can drive winning? And I think what we found here, in all honesty, is that LaMelo really hasn't had to drive winning. He's had to stay
Yeah.
healthy, which
Stay
has been
healthy. Yeah.
important,
100%.
and
100%.
which is what he's had to do, right? And he's been healthy and he's been on the floor. Now, can that continue? I don't know. But the reality is that this sort of three-headed monster of Miller, Ball, and Knipple, and all three of their ability to shoot from long range, to shoot it off the catch, shoot it off the dribble, and also to be interchangeable defensively because of their size. This is just a really, really big team. And it makes it very, very interesting to watch them play. Defensively, I still think that when push comes to shove, there's a little bit lacking when it comes to the Hornets defense, but I think offensively, they're so dynamic. And let's face it, part of the dynamic between the Pistons and the Hornets goes back to the brawl. You know, from the opening tip of this potential series that you would have a ton of intensity, a ton of animosity. There would be an edge to this series that would keep everybody watching it. And because, again, it's likely to be, if Charlotte finishes where they are now and can get into the playoffs, most likely an 8, although they could potentially jump up and pass Orlando or Miami and get into the 7-8 game and maybe end up being a 7 and playing the number 2 seed. But I think it's going to be tough. They have to make up, well, I guess they got to make up 2 games, which doesn't seem crazy. But I'm hoping for this Pistons Hornets series just because I think there's a lot of fun potential matchups. I look at, okay, who do the Pistons put Asar Thompson on? Does he take Knipple and try to take him out of the game? Do you have to put him on Brandon Miller to match athleticism? Do you try to take LaMelo out? Where does he go?
Yeah.
I think then you have on the inside with obviously Duran and Diabate and what happened that sort of touched off the fight. You got Bridges and Beef Stew. I just think there's a ton of interesting matchups potentially in this series. And I think when Charlotte has the ball, they have a lot of interesting ways that they can attack, not just the Pistons, but every team, just because those 3 guys on the perimeter are all interchangeable and all 3 of them can shoot. And the 2 teams are just such a contrast because Charlotte is such an offensive oriented team and their defense is a little bit questionable. And I think Detroit, although their offense hasn't been a problem in the playoffs, you can see where as things get bogged down and there's more scouting and teams really start to try to take away Cade Cunningham, make him give the ball up, who's going to be the guy for Detroit that can play make and do some things when Cade Cunningham either can't or is out of the game or teams just try to take him out? I just don't. I know Duncan Robinson's done it in the past for the Heat. I don't necessarily love him as my main shooting option out on the floor. And then other than that, Dennis Jenkins, maybe he's played well in these 2 games against the Cavs, and he's had a really good season. But again, is he a big time Eastern Conference Finals performer? I
No.
don't know. It's interesting. I just think this series, the number one reason is, again, there's going to be a distaste for each other right from the get go. And too often in this league, we see the post game handshakes and the love all around. And it would be nice to see an old fashioned 80s, 90s series of two teams that really don't like each other. And I think that's what we would get if we were to see the Pistons and the Hornets.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that would be a really fun series to watch. And here's the thing, like, I'm I do worry about the jumping up to the 8 spot in the play-in and then being the 7 seed in case we are the 2 seed. But then I think about, like, if I'm the Cavs, what am I positioning myself? Yes, we could get to the 2 seed, but hear me out, Mike. Hear me out. Okay? If we just settle into the 4 seed, we play the 5 seed, then we play either Detroit in the first round or whoever the 8th seed is if Detroit loses to them. And then we get, after New York and Boston have torn each other apart, we get them. What sounds more appetizing to you? I know we're talking now potential. I think letting Detroit and or New York and Boston tear each other apart in round 2 and us getting either Detroit or whoever they play, should we get out of round 1, which we should. Like, that sounds more appetizing to me.
Okay, well,
I
here's the question. I think here's the bigger question. In the first round, right? In the first round, if you stay in the 4 spot, you are likely going to play either Toronto or Philly, Orlando, most likely the Raptors, I would say. Now, the Raptors beat us twice pretty easily earlier in the season. I don't really feel like in the playoffs that the Cavs would have a ton of difficulty with the Raptors. Like I said, I've said this, I know I said it early on in the season. I'm kind of scared of every team with this Cavs team after watching us play in the playoffs the last few
yeah,
years. I don't think I would go into any series and be like, oh, yeah, we're playing Toronto. That's going to be a 4-1 easy. We're going to walk through that series. I just I don't I don't feel like this team is built in that way. I know they did it to Miami last year, and then they ran into a buzzsaw of Indiana, but I don't feel like this team is going to walk over anybody. But I will say, if you finish in the 4 seed, let's just say, then you're getting Toronto. I think that's a pretty good outcome. If you finish third and you get Philly, probably okay too. But what about the off chance that you get the 2 weeks where Joel Embiid is healthy? You got Maxey and Edgecombe.
Paul George.
Paul George is back from his PED suspension. Potentially, right? A healthy Philadelphia 76ers team would scare me in a one series. Now, Philadelphia is not going to win 3 playoff series because there's no way all those guys are staying healthy. But if you were to catch them in the first round and they were relatively healthy, that would scare me a little bit. Orlando, Miami, Atlanta, I would feel pretty confident that the Cavs would take care of business against all those teams. So if you're talking about finishing second or third in the first round, I think that would be pretty good. Then I think it comes down to which of those 3 teams above the Cavs, if you had to rank them in order, which teams are you most afraid of and least afraid of? I honestly think I'm least afraid of the Pistons. Then, oh man, I feel like the Knicks are snake bitten the same way the Cavs are in some ways, but I feel like the Knicks have the Cavs number. I think I'd put Boston second, and I think I'm actually most afraid of the Knicks. So your point of staying in 4 would put us in the second round playing Detroit, which I just told you I think they're the least formidable opponent for the Cavs. Not that again, I would feel confident that we were going to beat them. I'd still feel like, oh no, here comes Detroit. Boston and New York in the other Eastern Conference semifinal. Let them beat each other up and then take whoever's left and try to beat them in the Eastern Conference finals. I think if we could go Toronto, Detroit, and then the winner of Boston, New York, I'd be okay with that as a route to the NBA Finals. At the same time, I would probably prefer to have home court, but that would mean more than likely you're going to play the Celtics or the Knicks in the second round. And look, there's pluses and minuses to everything, but I think spot on in that if you get Toronto in the 4-5, then you get Detroit, then you get one of Boston or New York, whoever comes out of that series. I think that would be a pretty good path for the Cavs. Now, again, you'd have two series where you don't have home court advantage, but I do think that
Hey, it's
that
just
path.
it's Mike. It's just like when we went to the finals in 20 was it 2018 when we were like them. We weren't the one seed. There was a year that the Cavs just went to the finals because we just drew the right path. Like we had an easy.
Right.
I mean, once again, we had LeBron at that point. Let's remember. I understand that,
Sure.
but I'm just saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're gonna have to beat two out of those three teams above you anyway. So I guess it really doesn't matter what order that you beat them in. I just feel like this Cavs team, the more they could build their confidence and step through. So if I think Detroit's the easier series, then I guess I'd rather play them in the semifinals, meaning that if you can knock them off, it just builds some confidence in this team that I still think is fragile mentally and maybe lacks a little bit of toughness. I do like the new additions after watching Keon Ellis, after watching Schroeder on this team. I think Schroeder gives this team an edge, although, again, he got pickpocketed twice in the last minute and a half, ball just taken right out of his hands. But I do like Schroeder on this team. I think he gives this team a little bit of
Edge, a little bit of an
a little
edge.
bit of an edge, but it's hard because he's so like he's obviously not you're not throwing him out there to go bang with beef stew. He's not built in that kind of way.
He's
But I
Jose
do think that
Alvarado. He's
I do
Jose
right.
Alvarado. He's Jose
I
Alvarado like.
Yeah, I do think he just like he's always talking. He's got a mouth. He's gonna just agitate people. I like what he's brought to the table. I like Ellis, what he's brought defensively. You said it last week in terms of this version of James Harden who's looking to pass and is looking to facilitate in addition to just dribble the ball all the time. His passing has really helped this team. And you've also seen the benefit of him defensively, just having some more size when he gets switched on to a big guy. He can at least body the guy and maybe try to get a strip or at least provide some kind of resistance that Darius Garland just could not provide. And so
Turnstile.
maybe that helps. Right. And so maybe that helps in the play. I mean, Garland just couldn't deal with guys with size inside. Anytime there was any kind of a switch where Garland got stuck on a big, it was over. That was 2 points or it was a foul. And with Harden, that's not the case. Now, Harden is not a great defensive player. He oftentimes gets blown by. Oftentimes he's out to lunch when his guy doesn't have the ball, but he is much bigger than Garland. He is much more stout against guys who are playing on the inside. And as a result, it just makes the Cavs defense tougher to score on. All that being said, I still feel like trading for James Harden when your team's weakness is mental and physical toughness in the playoffs, it remains to be seen. If somehow, some way, James Harden were to defy 17 years of history and play the way he has played since he arrived in Cleveland, that would be tremendous. Again, we don't need him to be a 35 point a game scorer. We just need him to be able to pass the ball and do a little bit on offense, especially if Donovan Mitchell gets back. So I think this team, I just don't know. Again, their playoff history over the last 3 years has been less than stellar. And I don't think it's because of their talent. I think it's because of the mental game and just being willing and able to fight back when somebody punches them in the mouth and pushes. And that remains to be seen. We're not going to get those answers. I said this at the end of last season, and I said it when we previewed this season that whatever happens in the regular season, it's not really going to matter until we get to May and hopefully June, because this team's questions are all playoff questions. The regular season questions have been answered. I think it's just a matter of what are we going to do in the playoffs. And so I could see the path being Toronto, Detroit, and then the winner of Boston, New York. I think that's a pretty good route for the Cavs to go. And like I said, I wouldn't feel overly confident in any of those series, but I certainly feel like the Cavs would be capable of winning all of them and certainly probably of losing them too.
Yep. Just a few updates. Jared Allen apparently banged knees with the Detroit player, and they decided to be cautious. He said that he's going to be fine in the hallway. They said It's interesting the Cavs schedule. Like I was sitting here, look, like they don't play till Sunday.
Yeah, 4 days off. It's nice.
Nice.
Which is
They'll
why,
probably
which is
they'll,
why Mitchell, if Mitchell even had any potential of playing tonight, that's why they sat him tonight because you got 4 more days off. So hopefully those 4 days off, he comes back
well, they play
with the
Boston.
Celtics, yeah, healthy. So
Yeah. So I guess this tails into my second series. I am surprisingly not going to pick a Cavs series, Mike. I
okay,
want Boston, New York. I want that because I want them to kill each other and just make it a 7 game series and wear them out. And this is all obviously this is all under the guise that we are the 4 seed. Okay, this is under the guise that we are the 4 seed. I want Boston and New York to be 2-3 and be able to beat each other up. I think there's a lot of intrigue there. Obviously, we know Karl Anthony Towns' lack of defensive prowess, but how good is Jalen Brunson? How good can Jalen Brunson continue to be? He's been playing really, really well. I know they he did not play well against the Cavs, but he played phenomenally against the Spurs. That team played really, really well. And I think that's an intriguing series. Jason Tatum probably coming back. Simmons seemed to think it was going to be Friday. They haven't announced anything yet. I'm buying the Sunday, man. Like, why would they bring him back? The only question is, do you want to throw him into a game that big of a game against the Cavs? Is his first game? But I mean, Peacock I think it's Peacock on Sunday, right? It's a Peacock game on Sunday. It's just what you need to hear. So you're not gonna be able to watch it. um,
no, I think it's ABC. Isn't it ABC on? No, it's NBC on Sunday. It's NBC
is it NBC? It's not
because
Peacock. Okay.
no, it's NBC because didn't they this past Sunday it was Celtics Sixers, and there was the second whatever episode of the Tatum coming back from injury documentary that was shown as part of that, and people thought that when that game got flexed into the
Oh, it is
evening that
ABC, Mike. It is ABC today. It is ABC this week. It is ABC. You were
ABC.
right.
All right, well there you go. I said
Can't
NBC.
keep track. Can't keep track of what.
I said NBC.
I know they can't keep. I can't keep track of what day. What days all these networks are on. There is an NBC game on Sunday night. So the Sunday night game is NBC because it took the place of Sunday Night Football. So that's what they did there. Anyways, okay. So I just really think that, Boston has played really really well this year. Bringing Tatum back into the situation obviously is intriguing. There's history between Boston and New York. I think it'll be a really fun series. I probably pick Boston in that series just because of their experience and consistency. Even despite the fact of not knowing how good Jason Tatum is going to be, I just feel like Boston is a. I trust Boston slightly more than I trust New York. I think if I'm the Cavs, I would probably prefer to play New York than Boston. I don't know if you feel that way. But that could be another conversation point. I just think if I know that I'm going to be having an undersized Jalen Brunson and I'm going to have Karl Anthony Towns defending my bigs, I feel like that gives me a better opportunity to play than if Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and um uh
Derek
why am I
White
blanking? Derek
being
White, thank you.
pressured.
Yeah, those guys are pestering. I just feel we hunt Jalen Brunson like we did in the formula that we saw in the game last week for us just favors us. So I don't know how you feel on that, but I probably would prefer to play New York than Boston, honestly.
I think I'd rather play the Celtics,
Oh, okay.
and only because when I look up and down the rosters in the Eastern Conference, I think the guy I'm most afraid of in a playoff series
Is
of
Brunson?
yeah, of winning games by himself. Sounds crazy that the 5'11" fire plug guy, Jalen Brunson, is the guy I'm most afraid of. But I feel like playoffs against the Cavs, whatever that was 3 years ago, and then just in every time the Cavs and Knicks match up, I just feel like Brunson's one of those guys. I just feel like the Cavs haven't figured out quite how to defend him. And you're right that on the other end of the floor, the fact that you flip Garland out of the Cavs lineup and now the Cavs can sort of do unto the Knicks what the Knicks have always done unto the Cavs and be able to attack the Cat Brunson duo, which again every team is going to do, but the Cavs now are much better equipped with Harden to be able to potentially attack in the playoffs with, potentially attack Jalen Brunson. Now, again, that's with the caveat that what version of James Harden are we getting? So I don't know, but I feel like Mitchell Robinson just destroys the Cavs, and I feel like Jalen Brunson destroys the Cavs. And despite the fact that they have Karl Anthony Towns, which is always a positive for the Knicks opponent, I still feel like I'm more afraid of Brunson than I am of the Celtics. And look, I despise the Celtics. I would not be excited for a Cavs Celtics series because I would feel like I don't know how we're going to fare in that one either. But I would feel a little bit more confident against the Celtics just because I don't think that anybody on their team strikes the same fear in me personally than Jalen Brunson. That's not to say Jalen Brown or whatever version of Tatum comes back, if he comes back, that those guys aren't really good and haven't been really good against the Cavs in the past, because they certainly have. But I feel like uh, splitting hairs, I'd probably rather play the Celtics than the Knicks, but you're going to have to beat, I'm guessing, one of those two teams for sure to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. And if you want to make the finals, you're going to have to beat two out of those three teams that are currently above the Cavs in the standings, like I said before. But I think Knicks Celtics is a good pick. Series that we obviously saw last year, and the Knicks had the two 20-point comebacks in the Garden in games 1 and 2, and then Tatum
Yeah.
goes down later in the series. But I think both teams would be certainly up, and both cities would be up for that matchup without question.
All right. Do you have another Eastern Conference matchup? Because that you took my other one was the one you already said. So
Okay, so the other one that I would want to see, and I already told you I've eliminated whatever 90% of the teams here or 50% of the teams that I wouldn't want to see. So I'm going to go Pistons Knicks as a rematch of last year's first round series. Same reason almost. Now there's not a history of a brawl, but certainly these are two physical teams. I think Detroit feels like they let one slip through their fingers last year. And the fact that these two teams would both be physical. I think this would be a low scoring series. I think it would be a competitive series. I think it would be two teams that would be going back and forth at one another. I think Detroit has a lot of different looks that they could throw at Jalen Brunson. I think Detroit has the same problem against New York that they do against Boston or the Cavs, where the Knicks are going to shoot the ball better from three, shoot more, and have more makes than Detroit is. But I think Detroit has the type of defenders that potentially could give the Knicks trouble, because you look at who can they throw on Jalen Brunson, and then Pistons have a bevy of big physical defenders that are capable of guarding a guy like Brunson. And then same thing in the front court with Cat. I feel like Detroit is pretty well stacked to be able to deal with Karl Anthony Towns. So I think that matchup from a Pistons defense against Knicks offense would be interesting, just because of the matchups that they can throw at each other. And then on the other end, when Detroit has the ball, you look at, okay, who's going to guard Cade, and what are they going to try to do with them? You could throw Anunoby on Cade. You could throw Mikal Bridges on Cade. And so you have two big wing defenders for the Knicks to throw at a guy who obviously Detroit needs to control tempo, control possessions, get into the lane, create for himself, create for others. And if he doesn't, if the Knicks were able to control Cade in that way and prevent him from getting to his spots and make it difficult for him to spray out to guys, I don't know where Detroit turns, just like we talked about that earlier. So there's lots of different things that could swing this series on both sides of the ball for both teams. And like the series that I talked about earlier, Detroit and Charlotte, I think Detroit and New York that series would also have an edge of two teams that really didn't like each other, that are both physical teams. And I think that would be a fun series for us to see in the East.
no. All right. So I guess we'll move to Western Conference, Mike. You ready?
All right. Sounds good. Are you going
I mean,
first, or you want me to go first
I'll go
again?
first. I'll go first in the Western Conference, Mike. I
All
think
right.
this is
Okay.
probably okay. So I think there's two obvious choices here. I think there's two
Okay.
obvious choices.
Okay.
I'm not going to go for the one that you probably think I am gonna
Lakers?
not. I am
You're not
not gonna
taking the
no.
Lakers?
Oh, and I'm not taking the Thunder either. I want
Okay.
Spurs Nuggets, baby. Give me Spurs Nuggets. Jokic versus Wemby. There's no. This is the series you need to want, right? This has got to be number one, right? Do you agree with me?
Yeah, Spurs Nuggets is definitely
This
one of
this
my two, without
this
question.
this has to be the series that I think this is the series I want more than any series in the whole playoffs. I want it, however it happens. I want it to happen. I want Jokic versus Wemby. I want the rest of these, San Antonio Spurs, Stephon Castle, Fox. I want these guys going against Jamal Murray. I just want to see what it's like. I think it would be an intriguing game series. I don't think it's not a pushover series. This is a 6-7 game series, no doubt in my mind. It's just and I think I think the Nuggets probably are. I can't. They've been playing so wishy washy. The Cam Johnson adding hasn't been great, but I just think that's probably San Antonio's leap this year has been so big, and I'm really high on San Antonio, but I'm just worried that the Jokic effect is too much, and they end up winning the series. I don't know. I know that we probably both like Jokic more than we like Wemby. I don't quite hate Wemby like what's his name? Uh Dave Jacoby, man, taking shots at Wemby last on the podcast. I but I think we both enjoy Jokic more than Wemby at this point. Um, I don't think I really care who wins the series, but I guess the question is who would if these two teams are playing and they're not neither of them are the one seed and they're going to have to play the Thunder in the next round. I just don't want the Thunder to win. So which of these two teams is better equipped to beat the Thunder? Probably San Antonio. Maybe. I don't know. I think it's 50-50 either way. I think both teams could beat the Thunder and both teams could get destroyed by the Thunder. I think. I think if you want a Nuggets Thunder series because of what happened the other day with the Lou Dort being a clown. What a clown. Get out of here, dude. I'm done with it. And then
That was ridiculous. That was ridiculous.
Dagnall acting like, oh, that's a flagrant two. Get out of here, dude. That is clearly a flagrant two. You're trying to take out the best player in the league. Give me a break. Don't be intimidated by Jokic. I mean, if he got hurt, he would just go home and ride his horses. Come on, man. Just let the guy live his life, play basketball, and go to his horses. Why are you trying to injure the guy? Come on. But yeah, anyways, I think it has to be Nuggets Spurs. I think that has to be the number one series for sure.
So clearly, the main reason why anybody wants to see that series is to see the matchup between Jokic and Wembanyama. You have the best offensive, in this case center, but offensive player in the game in Jokic going against a guy who is the best defensive player in the league and is something that we really haven't seen anybody like Wemby who can move the way he can with his size, with his wingspan, his timing, everything that goes along with that in terms of just his ability to impact what's going on the Spurs defensive end of the floor at all times. And I mean, it's just such an interesting matchup because you have the compare and contrast between what Jokic can do on offense and what Wemby can do on defense. And it would be interesting to see how do you solve Wembanyama if you're Jokic? Where does he take him on the floor to try to attack him? Is he attacking him down low, trying to get into his body and draw fouls? Is he taking him outside and trying to work him from out there? That piece of it would be super, super interesting. I think the key to this whole thing still comes down to for Denver is what is the availability of Aaron Gordon when push comes to shove in the playoffs? Can they get him healthy? And if they can, great. Then I think Denver is going to be right where you want them to be. If this series were to take place and there was no Aaron Gordon, I think that Denver becomes much more susceptible to losing games. And I just don't think they can do it without Aaron Gordon. And right now Peyton Watson is still out, and we're still waiting to see when he's going to be able to come back from his hamstring injury. And without Gordon and Peyton Watson, the Nuggets, I don't think they can get to the NBA Finals without those two guys healthy. If they are healthy, now this series, Denver and San Antonio, becomes much more interesting. Besides the fact that it's just Jokic versus Wembanyama, which in and of itself is going to be a fascinating chess match on both ends of the floor to see which guy guards the other. If they don't guard each other, how do the teams decide to match up? And I think that with Denver, we kind of know what a Denver Nuggets team in the playoffs is going to look like. Obviously, you're slotting in theoretically Cam Johnson. Maybe it's theoretical Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr., who there's a reason why Denver wanted to get him out of town, just being inconsistent. And you never really knew which guy you were getting and his injury history. But Michael Porter Jr., the year they won the title, he was very, very important. And he's a 6'10 guy who can move, who can shoot it off movement, who can shoot it off the dribble, who rebounds pretty well, who made himself, at least at times, an average defender when he's with the Nuggets. And Cam Johnson, to this point, really has been a disappointment, hasn't played nearly as well as what people thought he was going to. At the same time, Peyton Watson, who was somebody that they couldn't count on previously in the playoffs, has stepped up. I think their bench is better. Tim Hardaway's helped them. Valanciunas has helped them. Denver's whole thing just depends upon the health of Aaron Gordon. If Aaron Gordon is out, then they're just missing a defensive player that they're going to need to guard some of the best players in the Western Conference in order to make it through to the NBA Finals. And without him, I think they're dead in the water. And then you look at the Spurs. I've heard everybody talk about the inexperience piece. And then I think the other thing with them is you just don't have great shooting on the San Antonio Spurs. Vassell shoots it pretty well, but when you look at Dylan Harper and you look at Stephon Castle, both of those guys for the season are right down around 30%. I believe Castle is below that right now. Let me see. He is shooting 29.4%, and Dylan Harper is even worse at 25%. So in the regular season, like we said, that doesn't necessarily hurt you that much because teams aren't specifically game planning to attack your weaknesses game to game in the regular season. But in a 7-game series, you can bet that those two guys are going to get dared to shoot. And guys are going to be playing in the lane. Guys are going to be helping off them. People are going to be going under screens. And somebody on that team is going to have to be able to make threes. And you certainly, if you're the Spurs, I guess you're happy when Wembanyama makes some, but you'd much rather have him down around the basket where he's going to shoot 80% instead of where he's out by the 3-point line where he's going to shoot 34%. And so there's a lot of questions to be answered on the Spurs side just because they're a brand new team. I feel like we know the answers with Denver, but are those guys, is the personnel going to be there? And then the number one thing, like we've said numerous times here, is just the chess match between Wemby and Jokic, particularly when Jokic is on offense and Wemby's on defense. That would be a fascinating 7-game series to watch those two guys bob and weave and try to figure each other out and see what that heavyweight fight would look like. I think this would be a great series.
Yep. All right. What's your series, Mike? What's your series? We both, that was one of our two. So let's see if we have the same second series.
So I think the second one that I want to see is one that we've seen before, and it involves, again, the Nuggets. But I said Nuggets Timberwolves because all season long we've been saying we think that Minnesota is kind of this not sleeping giant, but a team that was kind of overlooked. They've made into the Western Conference Finals the last 2 years. They've been kind of languishing down in the 5, 6, 7 spot for the entire season. Right now, they just jumped the Nuggets and they're up to 4th in the Western Conference. They're a half game behind the Rockets. They continue to have very strange losses and come from ahead losses. on their resume, but when this team is dialed in defensively, when you think about Gobert, you think about Jaden McDaniels, and then you think about Ant Edwards when he's really dialed in to play defense, which he isn't game to game, night to night, every possession. But when push comes to shove, playoff time, I think he'll be there. And we've already seen Minnesota beat Denver in the playoffs. So I think if both of these two teams were at full strength, I just think that the matchups are super interesting because Minnesota can throw lots of length at Denver, and that has proven to give Jokic not trouble, but it's caused him to have to maybe think twice to try to figure some stuff out. And Ant is he ready? We talked about it. What was that? 2 years ago. Is this guy ready to ascend to the level of the Jordans, the Kobe's? Is he getting there at such a young age? And he didn't quite get Minnesota over the top and into the NBA Finals. And when the year they lost to Dallas, it just didn't happen for him. And he continues to just get better and better and better. I don't think he's ever going to be an A-plus passer, but he's continued to improve that aspect of his game. And so I think this playoff run is going to be fun to see what Anthony Edwards is capable of in the playoffs. And just because of the history between these two teams and the fact that Minnesota has proven they can beat Denver, even at full strength Denver, that's why I think this series would be intriguing. I'm not sure without Aaron Gordon, I don't think Minnesota has anybody that could, I'm sorry, that Denver has anybody that could really deal with Ant out on the perimeter. I don't know how they'd match up with him. Probably put Christian Braun on him, which I'm guessing probably wouldn't go too well. So this would be a fun
Yeah.
series. I'd like to see what Ant could do against the Nuggets, and like to see what Denver would do against a team that has previously beaten them in the playoffs. Right now, that's sitting as the 4-5, which would be a fun, fun opening series. Hard to believe one of those two teams be going home in the
Well,
first round.
yeah. So then I guess my series was actually Minnesota, Oklahoma City. I think
Okay.
that I think that series would be interesting for a lot of the same points that you just made. I think the length, you know, that in Minnesota brings. It would be interesting to watch Anthony Edwards and SGA go at it, and Anthony Edwards' facial expressions every single time SGA gets a foul call. Um, I have a kid in my class that wears SGA. One of my classes that wears SGA. Like he wears a basketball jersey every single day, so he's got like a whole bunch, and he wears
Yeah.
SGA jerseys. And every single time if I hand him a paper, I was like, oh, watch out, they might call foul, and he just shakes his head at me because I'm just being ridiculous about it. But anyways, just seeing Anthony Edwards' facial expressions and everything, I think it's interesting. The matchup, they've played in the playoffs before, correct? Like a few years ago,
Well,
or
that was last year, right? Oklahoma
yeah,
City Oklahoma City beat them, and it was 4-1, really not competitive. And I think the thing with this series that would be intriguing to me is, again, to watch Edwards try to solve Oklahoma City's defense, who obviously has a ton of guys that they could throw at and have thrown at Anthony Edwards in the past. So you start with Dort. You could throw Kason Wallace at him. You could throw Caruso at him. You could even throw SGA at him. They just have a bevy of guys that one could match up with him one-on-one. And then clearly you have Chet back at the rim and Hartenstein waiting to try to protect the rim as Edwards puts the ball on the floor and tries to attack and drive. So I think that would be just that particular matchup between the Oklahoma City defense and Anthony Edwards, I think would be fun to watch. And look, Minnesota, when they're dialed in, has a really good defense. And I think to compete with Oklahoma City, you're going to have to figure out ways to score against their defense. And if you don't have a good offense, I think if you're just a defense only team, you're going to have a really hard time beating Oklahoma City because Oklahoma City's defense is still the best in the
yeah,
league. So I don't think you're going to out defense them. I think you have to play good enough defense and have an offense that can figure out ways to attack and get into the teeth of their defense and have something that you can do offensively that disrupts what Oklahoma City likes to do, which means you can't turn the ball over against them. Live ball turnovers lead to runouts and lead to easy baskets for Oklahoma City. So you got to take care of the
yep.
ball first and foremost and make sure you get a good shot on every possession. And And then I think you have to be able to attack them a little bit on the inside. And I think Minnesota has the kind of power players that potentially could do that. So I think this would be an interesting series if we were to get it. And it, as things stand right now, that could potentially be a second round series between Oklahoma City and Minnesota, which that would be a fun second round series for sure.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at. So I guess Mike, there were a few other news things we wanted to briefly talk about. I guess we could that we didn't talk about. I guess here are the three things that come to my mind. Giannis comes back. What does that mean? Does that mean anything? It clearly didn't mean anything yesterday. Okay, that's the first. Two, Trae Young gets ejected, and then they announce that he's going to play. Adam Silver must be coming after them. Okay, that's two. And then three, have we really gone this whole episode without talking about how the Lakers are just not playing very good basketball right now? I guess those are the three things that come to my mind. So you can dissect. Here's what I'm going to say. I'll start on the Giannis thing. I don't think it matters. I think Milwaukee is too far gone. I think they're going to try to compete. They're going to try to play. I know they beat the Cavs without Mitchell, Harden, everybody, but I'm not. If I had saw Minnesota, I would not be concerned about. Or if I saw Milwaukee, I would not be concerned about them in a series. I obviously they're in a position where the Eastern Conference is so bad. Like they probably should be a play-in team, right? They should be a play-in team. Will they be a play-in team? Will it matter? It won't matter in the long grand scheme of things. But if somehow Milwaukee sneaks in there, and Charlotte sneaks in, and Milwaukee's the 8th seed, and they're playing Detroit, I just know like Detroit's the better team, but I also know that JB Bickerstaff is the coach, and he sees Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I know his defensive strategies in the past against Giannis have not gone very well. So I would not say that that's a walkover series for Detroit. So I think that would be the only piece on Giannis. As far as Trae Young, I guess this is exciting. Wizards fans get excited. Trae Young's going to be playing in a minutes restriction. They're probably still going to lose, but you can get a little bit of a glimpse of without Anthony Davis and whatever draft pick you get next year. Okay, congratulations. And then the last being like the Lakers. They are like 13 games over 500, but they are just. I think they still do. They have a negative point differential, Mike. Are they still?
According to what I see here, they're plus zero point 0.5, so they are now into the positive point differential. They've won two in a row, though, buddy. They won two in a row.
Listen, I don't care. I all I know is I'm not a believer in the Los Angeles Lakers. Whoever they play in the first round, get out of here. They're forever. Luka, I'm really bummed, Mike. I'm really bummed because I was a big Luka fan like his
You
first few
were,
years. I was
you were.
huge. Like I went to the first 2 years he was in the NBA. I went to the game. I dragged my dad to the Cavs Mavericks games, and I was a huge fan. I have soured so much on him and his antics. Like I'm honest, him and LeBron deserve each other. Their antics are ridiculous. Like at least at this point, like I don't think LeBron on the floor has been as demonstrative as he has in the years past. Maybe you disagree with me on that, but I feel like he's kind of the old head, and he's kind of like he knows that he's in the sun. Like the sun is setting on his career, and the clownish behavior on the floor is not there. But Luka's just doing it all. He's ridiculous. I can't even like every single play he complains about a call. Him and JB Bickerstaff, that would be a combination. Okay, I don't know. I'm really bummed because I really enjoyed Luka. I don't know what happened after his first few years. But I've really soured on him. He's a heck of a talent, Mike. He's a heck of a talent, but his antics, I just can't take it anymore. Like, I don't know.
The complaining is ridiculous. It's completely and utterly ridiculous. As you said, it's on every single play that he is complaining to the officials. And Luka's in his eighth season at this point, and I, he's clearly, as you said, a tremendous talent. He has every skill that you would want a player to have when he has the ball in his hands. However, defensively, he is often nowhere to be found. And offensively, I would like him to be able to do something besides just stand around when he doesn't have the ball. And as it's been proven in NBA history, when you have a guy who wants to have the ball in his hands all the time, and then when he doesn't have it, doesn't really do anything to threaten the defense or help his teammates by moving or screening or just generally being a guy who's not standing still, that's a problem. And I think that's the problem that the Lakers have right now. And it's a problem that the Lakers are going to continue to have. And look, there's no possible way that you can ever argue that trading Luka the way they did last year was a good move by the Dallas Mavericks. But at the same time, are you 100% certain that Luka's going to win a title at some point in his career as the best player? I kind of feel like at this point, I'm not
No.
entirely convinced that that's going to happen. 3 or 4 years ago, if you'd have said, "Hey, this guy's never going to win a championship as the best player," I think we all would have said, "Nah, that's crazy. He's going to for sure." And now I'm just not so sure. Not because of his talent, but because when you have the ball in your hands all the time, and then all you do is complain to officials, and you don't play hard at the other end of the floor, like the other guys on your team are pros. Those dudes know how to play. And there are lots of guys in the league who want to play hard and want to play defense and want to compete at that end. And when the guy who has the ball in their hands all the time only wants to whine to officials when he misses and doesn't want to play at the other end of the floor, that's not a good setup for positive team chemistry. And it's just not a winning formula. And so, look, the trade was crazy, and they certainly should have gotten a lot more for him than they did. But I have to say, the more and more you look at it, I'm not sure the premise that building a championship team around Luka is pretty difficult. I'm not sure that premise was wrong.
Yep. I agree. And once again, listen, I'm going to be clear here. Dallas definitely did not win this trade. Okay, I still don't think Dallas won the trade. Who did they get for Anthony Davis again? Remind me.
Well, when they traded with Atlanta, no, they traded with Washington. They got Corey Kispert, and they
Okay.
got who's the and Middleton, right?
Okay. So I still am going to argue.
No, and CJ. They got CJ, Corey
Oh
Kispert,
yeah,
and CJ. Yeah,
Dallas is still Lakers still won the trade. Okay, let's be
right,
clear here. The
for
Lakers
sure,
still won the trade, but
absolutely.
it's not as the chasm isn't as large because of what we're seeing. Like, and here's the thing. Yes, the thing is this: the Lakers are going to be good going forward with Luka on the team. Okay, it's who they put around him. They need to put
Right,
you know people around
but
him.
do
And
but do they win the title? Just yes or no? Do they can does Luca win a title in his career as the best player on a team? I'm going to say no.
I think no is the answer.
Fair
I think
enough.
no is the
Yeah.
answer. Which once again, if you would have told us that 2 years ago, we after they went to the finals, you would have said there's no way. Or was that
Yeah.
3 years ago? Oh, 2 years
Whatever
ago.
it was. Yeah. 2 years
Yeah,
ago.
two
Yeah.
years.
2 years ago when they made it. So, yeah. All right. Then the Trae Young thing, as the commissioner cracked down, maybe, I don't know. If you're Washington, you obviously have a decision to make of whether or not you're going to extend Trae Young, how much money you're going to offer him at some point. I don't know if they will or they won't. Washington's whole franchise future comes down to this next draft lottery. And if they can somehow get into the top four and find a guy who's going to be the star that their team revolves around, and now next year you have Alex Sarr, you have Davis, you have Trae Young, and you have one of those top four guys who turns out to be a really good player, you can get pretty good pretty fast. I'm not saying that's a championship team, but if one of the four guys in this draft really turns out to be a franchise changing superstar, and you have Alex Sarr, who again is not that, but is a very good young player,
Yeah.
then I think suddenly Washington has something. But other than that, I don't know why you care about watching Trae Young if you're a Wizards fan. at this point. I just don't think. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why you care or why you'd want to watch him.
Yeah,
So that's
right.
that. And then what was the first one? I forget now.
Giannis,
I'm
Giannis,
totally
Giannis,
thrown.
Giannis.
Giannis. Oh
Does it
yeah,
matter?
Giannis.
Does it matter?
Giannis. So after the Bucks beat the Cavs, the Bucks were 2 games out of the play-in, and since then they have lost 3 in a row, and the Hornets have won 4 in a row, now 5 in a row. So it's they were two. Oh no, so Atlanta. Sorry, Atlanta's won 4 in a row, and so they were 2 games out. Now they're 4 games out, and it seems unlikely that they're going to be able to climb back in. But you can't say it's impossible. Him coming back didn't help the Bucks against Boston, but does it help them over the course of the last 20 games to win more? I don't think there's any doubt that the answer to that is yes. However,
That wasn't my question though. Does it matter? Is it going to affect things? Here's the question: do you think Milwaukee is in the play-in when it's all said and done? Like 4 games out currently, with 20 games to go. Do you believe in Giannis staying healthy and them being good enough to do that?
it's I'm going to say okay. So part of it is the best thing for Milwaukee to do. This goes back to the tanking, right? The best thing for Milwaukee to do is lose because then they potentially can move up in the draft and get a good player that they could potentially pair with Giannis. So the franchise themselves, collectively, the best thing for them to do is lose. Yet at the same time, when Giannis comes back on the floor, that should give them a better chance to win games. I'm going to say, yes, it matters. And I'm going to say that Milwaukee jumps Atlanta and gets into the play-in. As crazy as that sounds.
Okay, I respect it, Mike. I respect
So
it.
I'll say
And
yes. I'll say
yeah,
yes.
yeah, okay, that's fair. That's completely fair. And if they are the 10 seed, here's my follow up question: if they're the 10 seed, do they come out of the play-in tournament? They got to win 2 games, and we're
Well,
gonna assume. We're gonna assume. Here's what we're gonna assume. We're gonna assume that Charlotte is the 8 seed in this exercise because, well, I guess you could assume however you want, but I would assume that Charlotte jumps to the 8 seed and they're in the first game and they win the first game. So, does Milwaukee beat the other terrible teams that are in this the play-in
here's
tournament?
here's what I'm gonna say. Here's what I'm gonna say. If I am any of the other three play-in teams and I have to play Milwaukee and Giannis in one game
I'm not excited.
to try to make it into the playoffs, I am not excited about that prospect. I would much rather play anybody else of those 4 teams if I'm one of the other 4 teams, even Charlotte. I think I would much rather see Charlotte than see Giannis in a one game winner take all playing game. So, who if they get in, if they get in and it's Orlando, Miami, Charlotte, and Milwaukee, I'd probably put my money on Charlotte and Milwaukee coming out of the play-in then.
Okay, unless they have to play each other in the first game, and then it's not going to matter. Then it's not going to
I
happen,
guess
right?
that's I guess that's true. So Charlotte would have to get to the 8 in order for that to happen, which they're 2 games behind, and I don't know how good Miami is, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe those teams, Orlando and Miami, maybe the Florida crew will hold the Hornets off. We'll have to see. Are all four of those teams, are they all in the same division?
No, they can't all be in the same division.
They
Miami's
got to
in
all
that
be in.
division too, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They.
They all got to
Oh
be in
my
the
God,
South,
they all are in that division. Oh dear
right? They're
Lord
all in the
Jesus.
Southeast. They're all in the Southeast division, right? So that's the Southeast
So
division
it's Milwaukee
playing
versus the
championship.
Southeast.
That's
You say
right.
Ohio,
So,
Ohio versus the world. It's Milwaukee in the Southeast. Hey, positive for Milwaukee, they wouldn't have to travel very far, right? They
true.
just
I guess
hop, skip, and a jump away, whoever they're
I
playing. So,
guess I guess that's true. Anyway, all right. So I guess we got it all figured out which playoff series we'd like to see 6 weeks out. It's going to be a fun last 6 weeks of the season to see what the matchups are. I do think that we have some potentially interesting matchups in both conferences in the first round. And then once you get to the second round, we should have a good series. All four of the second round series in both conferences should be interesting. And I don't anticipate there being huge upsets and some weirdo teams from the play-in getting in either conference, but I guess you never know. But I would anticipate that in the East, you're going to get the current top four is going to be the four, and then in the West, I don't think anybody below Denver. So that means the Lakers, Phoenix, Warriors, Clippers, Blazers. None of those teams are winning
Yeah.
a first round playoff series. The only intrigue is who ends up in the 4 or 5 and which one of those teams advances out of that spot. If you're in the West, I think you want to avoid the 4 or 5. You want to get into the 1, 2, or 3. And plus you don't want to be in the 4 or 5 because you don't want Oklahoma City in the second round. I think that getting to the one of those top 3 seeds in the West is really important for Minnesota, Denver, Houston, and San Antonio. Those teams should be vying to be spots 2 through 5. And San Antonio's 5 games up, so I'm guessing they're going to stay in the 2 seed. So basically, it's a 3-team race now to see who gets that 3rd seed, which is going to be, I think, pretty important to all those teams as they try to line up what their playoff run is going to look like.
Yep. All right, we'll see what happens next week. Oh, Mike, really quickly, so I can address the elephant in the room. You're winning the wins total by 43 points. I think it's over. Dusted.
All
Dusted.
right. There we go. Well, that's by you. You had been 2-0, I believe, right? Because this is the
Yeah.
3rd year we've done it. I think you were
Yeah.
2-0, so I'm still trying to creep my way back in. But good to know that for this year, at least, I had some inkling of success in the wins pool. So kudos
Yeah.
to me, I guess,
Yeah.
this time.
Congrats, Mike. Congrats, Mike.
All right, there we go. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. All right. On that note, we will leave it there. We'll be back with our regularly scheduled episode on Thursday night at 10 p.m. And then we'll be back next week with another NBA edition of the Hoopheads podcast. So thanks for tuning in tonight, and we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.